All right. Let me get everything set up here. 60 for Tennessee, 14 for South Alabama. Nothing surprising in that second half. Not a whole lot to talk about, I don't think. But we have to do a post-game reaction show. And I do think that there is some stuff to talk about. It just doesn't have to do with this football game that much. And I think we will. There's a little teaser for you. I'll say, as everybody is getting in here to watch, it's late, so I really appreciate everybody who does tune in. You are the reason that we do this, the reason that we can do this. So we send out a huge thank you to everybody who's watching. But welcome into the A to Z Sports Big Orange post-game reaction show. I'm Charlie Burris here with Zach Reagan, my fellow writer here at A to Z Sports. I usually do this show with Jonathan Crompton, former Vols quarterback, but he's off playing golf or some nonsense. And so Zach filling in dutifully this week for the South Alabama game. But I actually think we have an interesting conversation to have. And we'll get to that in just a minute. And that conversation is 6 games, Tennessee officially bowl eligible. That's a huge thing for this season. And I think that my question is, if this award existed, does Josh Heupel win, or is he very close in the contention of like first year head coach of the year? Because I mean, you look at everybody that there's been, and six wins from where Tennessee was. Nonetheless, we're going to talk about that. But first, let's just quickly cover this game, Zach. Second half, total drubbing. Joe Milton comes in. Any thoughts on that second half?
I mean, anytime you get your walk-on quarterback, some action at the end of the game, it's a pretty successful game. Gaston Moore came in there, run the last few plays there for Tennessee. I mean, 60 points. You got a couple of safeties in there. I mean, that kind of made it interesting. Hendon Hooker went over 300 yards. Really efficient game for Tennessee's offense. The defense played pretty well. You know, South Alabama's got a really good wide receiver there that was able to get into the end zone on a long play there, give South Alabama 14 points. But I mean, just that's what you do. They took care of business. It was never a game. It was over by the first quarter. That's what you want to do in late November in a game like this. It was really a Tennessee win here against a really, a team that was way out talented there.
Yeah, we already said it in that halftime. It is what it is, but it is very good to just take care of business against these inferior teams and just not have to have this him and Han. Oh, we've accidentally, UTEP kept it close. We don't need to have conversations like that like we used to.
Yeah, you don't have to rationalize anything about this game. Tennessee dominated. There's nothing else to it.
And and we were talking about this pre-show. Like, when is the last time, not just Tennessee, but the last time any team ever had 2 safeties in one game, and especially in one quarter to end the game? What a bizarre little twist there, but
it was nice to get to 60. I mean, I know it didn't matter. It just looks nice.
Yeah, that's I kind of said this. Like, you need style points right now. I don't know how much it'll count for, but I want a good bowl game. I want to go. I think a lot of people were hyping up because there were some projections earlier in the year that Tennessee could go to a bowl game against Clemson. I think Clemson's going to end up winning the ACC, unfortunately. So I think that might be out of the question. But I do think you could end up in a nice. I don't know. I think everything Outback is on the ball. Hopefully they don't just slot us into the Music City Bowl like always.
It seems like that. Maybe the was it the Duke's Mayo Bowl now in Charlotte?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, that could be fun. It'd be fun to go to Florida for the bowl game, but I think they're kind of looking at recruiting purposes. Go to Memphis in the Liberty Bowl, not exciting, but that's an area that you really need to recruit hard. And really, you talking about the style points. I think Tennessee needs to score as much as possible against Vanderbilt and in this bowl game, because they want to finish with like a top 10 scoring offense. Because if Josh Heupel can sell that to recruits, I think they're like number 17 in the nation coming into tonight. Obviously, their average would go up a bit after scoring 60. But that's just, you go from whatever they were, like 102nd or something under Pruitt last year, to a top 10 scoring offense. I mean, that speaks volumes on the recruiting trail.
I think it actually is massive. You need every single little bit. I don't think that there's a detail that you could shy over and be like, you don't have to worry about that right now. If you're Heupel, I think his whole tenure at Tennessee comes down to recruiting, because we've seen and we've talked about. It just appears that if you just plug good players into this system, you're gonna be a pretty scary football team.
Yeah, if they get some speed.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's. I don't know. You try to think of like a team to even compare that to, and where I go is like some of those earlier teams with Malzahn at Auburn, where it was just like teams couldn't fathom what that offense was doing. Saban had to get the SEC to like change the rules of football to contend with it. Like,
or even some of those Oregon teams that were so fast.
Yeah, or Oregon with Chip Kelly. That's probably the closest. Oregon with Chip Kelly. That's probably the closest. Yeah, I mean, and you just think back, like when you get those teams cooking with great players that are just super fast, it can be really scary. I mean, obviously, Oregon played a national championship game back then, so you know that it can be effective. But it's all going to come down to recruiting, and you can't. A bowl game in North Carolina right now, in an area where you need to recruit, and in an area where teams that you recruit against play, like, this is huge. You can't overlook any detail like that. And being able to go to a bowl, and potentially being able to go to a bowl that's not just like the Music City Bowl in Nashville, huge.
Tennessee's going to own that Nashville area anyway. It's already they're going to outnumber Vandy fans. Tennessee is the team in Nashville. I mean, you're recruiting against the top talent comes through Nashville. You're recruiting against Alabama and teams like that already. They're trying to come in and steal those recruits. So the only way, you just got to play better on Saturdays to beat those teams out. But one other thing I want to mention about this game.
Yep.
How about Cedric Tillman? I mean, that dude, he's a stud. I mean, some of those catches he made, just the improvement he has made under Josh Heupel in this first year. He was an afterthought under Pruitt before this season. And I've been extremely impressed by him, and he's improved every week, it seems like. I mean, he looked like a legitimate star out there tonight. Some of those catches he made down the sidelines.
Really impressive. And I don't know if at this point he's underrated. He was underrated earlier in the season, just wasn't getting his due, if you ask me. But now people are really taking notice, and that's great. And another question is, along with recruiting, it's like, who can you get to come back? I think somebody mentioned, a huge thing. Yeah, Tony Swanson right here. So does Hendon come back next year? Obviously, your success next year, in some sense, hinges on that. Hinges on who of this set of receivers comes back, of the ones that can lead.
And Tillman come back next year. He's a redshirt junior, I believe, this year. So yeah, he has eligibility still.
But you are talking about a kid that he has had a season good enough to probably have a tape that NFL scouts look at and go, there's something there. I don't know that it's going to be good enough to be drafted. It's probably borderline, but I think good enough to get like a free agent contract or something like that and move on. But is that, I think that you could sell to almost anybody on this team that has the ability to come back but might hop. I mean, it's a very small set of people, but I think you really have a nice selling point here, because there's nobody that stands out that I just go like, yep, they're gone. I mean, I saw somebody was saying like Cade Mays was talking as if he's already gone. Like, this is the next week is it for him. And I mean, he's really injury prone. And when he does play and play his best, he's a great offensive lineman. He's probably an NFL offensive lineman.
Yeah, and he's versatile. He's played everywhere in college, guard, tackle. He can play anywhere in the offensive line, and NFL teams like that. But he hasn't put a lot on tape over the last 2 years.
Yeah. And so I look at that and I go like, do you not think if you could get back and get strong and healthy? Of course, this season was supposed to be that for Cade. So, he may just come back and continue to be injury prone, but I kind of look at some of those guys and I go, I actually think that you could benefit from another year. And I'm very much a person that goes, when you get your shot at the league, freaking go to the league, man. Go get your money. Go get it quickly and go now and get that money, because that window where you have the physicality to do that is so small. But with some of these guys, I think you could really help yourself coming back.
This is a little kind of going off topic here, but Pat brings up Anthony Richardson. I think it's an interesting conversation because it does seem like he's gone from Florida. I think this could be a guy that if Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, he will go after Richardson, because with Matt Corral leaving, if I think Kiffin could want out of Ole Miss because of that, because he's losing Corral, and with LSU being open, if the Florida job comes open, the Miami job being possibly open, that they've been some reports that Kiffin could be interested. I wouldn't be surprised if Richardson, if Kiffin stays at Ole Miss, if that's where Richardson lands.
Unless Hooker leaves, I don't necessarily know why he would come to Tennessee. It would be awesome. I mean, he's an incredible athlete, extremely raw, and just was not honed in this year.
Yeah, I mean, if Hooker stays, he's the guy, and everybody's going to know that.
And you have a kid that's sort of waiting in the wings, presumably, and in this upcoming recruiting class. So, you kind of go from his perspective, like, what is there for me at Tennessee if Hooker comes back? But
Tennessee definitely needs to add a transfer quarterback, because I'm still not comfortable with Joe Milton being the backup. He's obviously a talented kid, but we still even saw tonight a lot of overthrows, a lot of off-target throws. Taven Jackson will be a true freshman next year. They're going to need somebody that they can kind of count on if something happens to Hooker. And there'll be a lot of guys out there. Miles Brennan from LSU. I think LSU will lose one of their other quarterbacks too, because they've got a couple down there. And I'm sure Hype will find somebody.
Well, let's talk about this sort of in the second half of the show, and we'll touch on it. Tennessee going bowling. We got some questions in the chat here about bowl game. It's a huge talking point walking away from this. It was a snoozer of a game, a fun, obviously, to smash a team and not, have a relaxing Saturday night. But you're bowl eligible, officially bowl eligible, 6 wins, you're going. And what does that mean? And specifically the question that I wanted to bring up in this that I think is a fun talking point is kind of the way I wanted to frame it is like, if this award existed, does Josh Heupel win first year coach of the year? He's got some competition. Brian Harsin had a decent year, although they lost to South Carolina tonight. And that's why I want to have this conversation, is some of the stuff that unfolded tonight. Shane Beamer beat Auburn. So
yeah, Shane Beamer surprisingly 6-5.
Yeah. And so there's some things like that I want to have that conversation, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. But before we do that, let me just say that this post-game broadcast is brought to you by all the other content on A to Z Sports.com. Go over A to Z Sports.com right now. Obviously, VOLS coverage from myself, Zach Crump, when he's back on the show. And we have all of that, and obviously we're very proud of that. But there is also, if you're a Titans fan, tons of Titans, incredible Titans coverage. I mean, genuinely 2 dedicated reporters. Buck has a post-game show and a daily show, and the guys do an in-game show. I mean, if you're a Titans fan, there's nowhere else better to go, in my personal opinion. And it's not, they do literally pay me to say that, but I'm a consumer of their Titans content. It's awesome. So they cover Kansas City. They have shows for the Dallas Cowboys now at A to Z. They're all over the place. It's crazy. I know that there actually are a pretty good amount of Cowboys fans, Tennessee fandom. So if you're a Cowboys fan, head over A to Z Sports.com, and then shameless self-promotion, the Big Orange podcast with myself and Zach Reagan every Monday. And we go a little more in depth than we can go here on the post-game show on the Big Orange podcast. So iTunes, Spotify, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, go over there, track it down, and you can listen to us, our nonsense, for even longer if that's, what you want to put yourself through. But let's talk about this. Josh Heupel, 6 wins so far, presumably going to be 7 because Vandy's a trash fire. You're going to a bowl game of some kind. You have some real style points behind you because the only teams that you lost to were the top teams in the league. Every team that was beneath you, you gave them the business. I mean, you beat South Carolina by like 28. You beat Missouri by like 25. You just destroyed the lower level teams. You beat Kentucky in a year where they were supposed to be really good. And so my question is, in in the scope of all of the first-year coaches, did Josh Heupel actually prove to be the best first-year coach in college football this season? I mean, it's certainly not Steve Sarkisian at Texas. Yeah, there's a pretty long list, and he is at the top. It's not Butch Jones at Arkansas State. So is he that guy this year? Is that as crazy as it might be with our history of coaching hires? I think that's a real conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's between him and probably Shane Bieber. Gus Malzahn has done okay at UCF. I mean, he's 7-4, but they've lost some games that they probably shouldn't have lost. I think Shane Beamer, I thought that was going to go off the rails at first at South Carolina. I thought it was a disaster just waiting to happen. And he's managed to turn it around. And, they beat Auburn, they beat Florida. I think it would be between Beamer and Heupel. If you give the edge to Heupel, I think it's because that the Tennessee situation was much worse than the South Carolina situation, given the timing of when the change happened. Obviously, the investigation, all the Pruitt stuff, all of the players that transferred. I mean, you lost a lot of key players. He had to, scour the transfer portal to find replacements, bring in a lot of new guys, and just kind of tape this thing together and take this offense from one of the worst in the nation to one of the best in the nation, a completely new system. And as disciplined as the offense plays, I saw somebody earlier commented that they only had 2 false start penalties. We've seen that get better as the season's progressed. So you've seen the team get better all season. Like if Tennessee played Florida right now, I think Tennessee would win by 2 touchdowns at least. I wish Tennessee did play Florida in late November. They need to change that maybe, but yeah, I could see giving the edge to Heupel. Yeah.
I did track down a list of all the first year coaches, and I'll kind of go through it and say, but we have some comments here from some folks weighing in on it. Ben Hall kind of saying what you're saying. We lost over 30 players in the offseason, and the team is going to win 8 games. It's absolutely Heupel. Logan says, no doubt he's the best first year coach in college football. Beamer got to play a Florida team that had already quit, and they found they found a nut against Auburn. Dude has done nothing but get his teeth kicked in and cheer about it. That's true.
Beamer is an odd personality.
He has some Butch vibes. Am I wrong? Like he cried. He cried after the Auburn game tonight. That's a Butch move. Crying after you win a game. And I mean, in Auburn, we were playing with their backup quarterback. I mean, come on.
Yeah, we do. It's correct. Tennessee did destroy South Carolina. It wasn't even close. So
yeah,
I wasn't really suggesting that Beamer should be the guy over Heupel. I just think he's the only one that's really even in the conversation with Heupel.
Yeah, because I think you look at Brian Harsin, the cupboard wasn't bare with Auburn.
No, that was probably the best situation to take over, really.
Yes, I think he probably had the best thing going out of anybody that took over a program this year. Obviously, I already mentioned Steve Sarkisian. I mean, what a nightmare that it's already fallen apart. Brett Bielema at Illinois. I'd kind of forgotten about some of these. Bielema at Illinois. What did they beat Penn State? That's something. But on the whole, I think they have a losing record already. Like it just isn't. Clark Lee at Vandy, they're just garbage. That's not. I will.
Jed Fish at Arizona, 1-10.
Oof! I didn't realize they were that bad. Wow, that's yikes. Yeah, Gus. Oh, so I mean, so this is a conversation to have about Heupel directly. Gus Malzahn at UCF relative to UCF having a disappointing season, although I think they've won like 7 games or something. But I think there were a lot of people, probably including me, I don't remember everything that I said, who were kind of like, why doesn't Tennessee just hire Gus Malzahn?
Yeah, we talked about that a decent amount.
Yeah.
And we talked about him and Tom Herman specifically were the two that we kind of bandied about there whenever Tennessee was looking for a new coach that just seemed like easy options. But, Malzahn, he's done pretty decent down there at UCF, but they have lost some games that they weren't expected to lose. They lost to SMU. They got killed by Cincinnati, which you kind of expect. And they've had some games. I think that was not this year. But Tulane, yeah, they just barely beat Tulane. So
Yeah, 7-4. I kind of the same as Brian Harsin. Like relative to what that team is supposed to do, I don't think that the cupboard was bare when Heupel left, and Heupel didn't like raid the place on his way out and bring a bunch of players up to Tennessee. So, yeah, you had Butch at Arkansas State, who has he won 2 games now? I
no,
think.
yes, 2 games, but they lost to Georgia State today, so he has something in common with Jeremy Pruitt now.
Hey, way to go, Butch. Oh, man. Yeah, now we're getting into some of the more obscure. Terry Bowden at UL Monroe. Who knew Terry? Still coaching.
They were playing LSU pretty tough tonight.
Yeah, I did see. Now that I'm looking, that is who LSU was playing. Otherwise, we did this tonight. We played a first-year coach in Kane Womack. Things didn't go so hot for him. And otherwise, Andy, the guy at Boise State that took over for Harsin, Andy Avalos. I have no idea how Boise State is doing, but I look at that whole set, and you just think about the uphill battle that Heupel is fighting. I think the only thing that would have taken him so very clearly over the top, I think as is, he is very near the conversation if he is not the clear winner of the the non-existent first year coach of the year award. But I think the only thing that would have taken him over the top is being truly competitive in one of Florida, Alabama, Georgia. And by truly competitive, I know they were competitive for a number of quarters in all of those games we all watched, but none of them were close at the end of the day. None of the, the final score on any of those games, none of them were close. So, and I think just that would have taken it totally over the top. Obviously, winning one of those games would have been an absolute hallmark, but is what it is. Maybe beating Pitt. But at that point, you still thought Milton was your guy. They hadn't adjusted to that yet. So it's kind of a outlier. But
I think this is an interesting point from David here. I don't think there is another coach that could have come in and had this success at Tennessee, because he's right. I don't think you could line up traditionally and try to run a traditional type of offense and win some of these games, like the Kentucky game, for example. I don't think Tennessee wins that game unless they're running Josh Heupel's offense. They just don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. Like it's really tough to come in a program that's in shambles. I would say look at Sark at Texas. He comes in and he's running a system that when you have good players can work. It kind of feels like Kirby at Georgia, where it's like he has good players and they just by force of will, by talent, they just take you over.
Yeah, it's not like Georgia's scheme is this like they're a high scoring offensive team and it's just running the ball down your throat.
Yeah, it's nothing like inventive. They're not, reinventing the wheel. They just are really damn talented. Like that's the bottom line. And then you look at Sark just trying to do he's doing a little more, probably scheming some, but just they don't have the guys, and they're going out and losing to Kansas. And today they're losing to West Virginia. I won money on that game, so thank you. BetMGM.com pays our bills here. But yeah, like they just right now in college football, the way to do it is to come in and do exactly what Heupel did. You are immediately competitive, or at least more competitive than you would be. I wonder if he kind of like other coaches start looking at this. Oh, and I mean, you look at Pittman with bringing in Kendall Briles, man, and instantly like it's not as speedy and crazy fast.
It's very similar though.
It is. And look at that success.
They're attacking the defenses the same way that Heupel is, where they're kind of taking what the defense gives them. They don't really have a deep playbook. It's a very similar kind of from that old Baylor style of offense.
Yeah, I think that they're sort of setting some groundwork here where I think you may see a trend really start to form in college football first year coaches, where they go like, okay, I don't have a ton to work with. I can implement some of this quote unquote gimmicky offense, but if it's gimmicky and it gets you wins, like who cares?
And to give full credit to Heupel, it's not like you just decide to run this offense and it works. It takes very disciplined players. And I tweeted about it earlier. I think it was Velus Jones that caught a pass down the sideline, a deep pass from Hooker. Really nice catch. He doesn't get up and celebrate one bit. He hops off the ground, runs straight to the referee to give them the ball, and gets back to the line of scrimmage so they can get to that next play. You have to get your kids to buy in to running that style of offense for it to work. Otherwise, none of it works. And Heupel's done a really good job of, getting these kids to play disciplined, knowing where to go. Just the little simple details like which referee to give the ball to can make or break a play for Tennessee, and they do it really well. I mean, you really haven't seen them mess up in those situations at all this year.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, because it does. You do look at it, and we were talking about it at halftime. Like, there's a real beauty in the simplicity, but it does also take, like, you have to be extremely dedicated to the system because it is predicated on this speed and just being one track mind. And like you said, like leaping up, being ready for the next play. You have to jump on the defense because that's how you win. You win by catching the defense in these tough positions, by sometimes getting them in, illegal substitutions and things like that. Like, that's how you win these games, is just catching them, putting them on their heels and keeping them there. And so, yeah, great point there.
We gotta give this question to you, Charlie, because I already know how you're going to answer it. Should or will Mike Ekeler be on the staff after next season or this season?
I hope not. Okay, let's say this. He is a fun piece of this coaching staff. Great social media presence. I believe a bit of a recruiting asset. So that is something. But maybe get a different special teams coordinator because, dude, what are you doing? Like, it was fun that Velus used his inherent talent to return a touchdown tonight. Ekeler didn't have anything to do with that. I mean, at most, it's, you do practice kickoffs, but like, so does every other team in college football, and nobody really does it all that differently. I mean, dude, that's been like the biggest weak point of this team all year long. I don't know if the guy needs to be fired. Like I said,
I mean, he's also the outside linebackers coach. So you got to think about that too.
Yeah, that's true. And that's hard to judge because it's so decimated as a position, and you don't even have the dudes. And maybe maybe he's spending too much time on the linebackers and not enough on special teams. But I just know the special teams just ain't cutting it. It's been the weakest point of this football team all year long. It hasn't gotten better. Tonight was probably the worst that it's been. You got hit on a fake punt. You got hit on an offside kick. Like, come on, hello, somebody. But hey, whatever. Yeah, I don't think he'll get fired, but let's maybe have a sit down and say, hey, Mike, we're gonna get somebody else to handle special teams next year. I think that'd be fair.
Yeah, and we'll see. I don't know if we'll have too much. If we'll see too much coaching turnover this year. I think Heupel's going to try to keep as much continuity as possible. I know Jerry Mack interviewed for the Akron job, the head coaching job, and supposedly he took his name out of consideration, but obviously he still wants to move up the ladder. But luckily, if Jerry Mack leaves, Tennessee's got some people they can hire. You could bring Montario Hardesty back from South Carolina, maybe, or promote from within. So hopefully, and that was the biggest issue with Pruitt, was the staff was always changing. They never really got along. All these guys seem to get along, and they've all worked together. Hopefully, they're all together for at least one more year.
Hopefully, because that was such a nightmare under Butch. It's just coaches in and out all the time, just constant turnover where guys like never had a coach for more than one, if they're lucky, 2 years. And so I like this staff, especially if they can turn it up on recruiting here at the 11th hour for this class. I mean, if they can get it together recruiting wise, I mean, you won 7, hopefully 8 games this year. Like, speaks for itself. I think that's fine.
Yeah, speaking of the 8 games, I've seen a lot of people asking. We talked about the bowl game a little bit earlier, but where Tennessee could play. I think it's going to be the Liberty Bowl, Music City Bowl, or the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte. I would think one of those 3. That's typically where you see like a 7-5 SEC team go.
Let's see. To me, like, the one that I would prefer would be like Duke's Mayo, the old.
They do a great. They do such a great job on social media too, promoting that bowl. That it's really fun.
It's a fun one, and let's see the projection. I'm looking at CBS's projection. They have us in the Mayo Bowl
I could,
against NC State.
yeah, and that's probably NC State, Louisville, one of those ACC teams that are 7-5, 8-4. That's probably what you're looking at. Maybe a Big Ten team. I think they have a tie-in as well, but usually with that game being in Charlotte, they'd prefer an ACC team to be in there.
Yeah, I think, and that would be cool to be able to play an ACC team, and maybe it's one that sometimes you recruit against. I don't know if you would get like North Carolina or something like that. I think that'd be cool. The Liberty Bowl. I know a lot of people love it because it's in Tennessee and whatever. But
That's
like,
purely for recruiting purposes. That's
it
it.
doesn't really do it for me. It would be fine, and I'm happy that we're in any bowl game. Let's be honest there. But that one doesn't doesn't thrill me. I guess the thing that we've always loved is like an Outback Bowl. I don't know if that everybody seems to think. At least I've seen a lot the Mayo Bowl the most. I would say that's the one that I've seen the most frequently. Even that projection with Clemson, it was the Mayo Bowl. So
And I'm sure the Music City Bowl will push for Tennessee because they know Tennessee will sell that place out in Nashville.
always.
Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being Nashville, but I think they'd be better served to play elsewhere.
Let's see if any. I'm looking at Sports Illustrated now. They say the Mayo Bowl, but against Virginia. See that would be fine, and not a
Yeah.
team that you would recruit against. Then they have Mississippi State in the Music City Bowl. I'm okay with any of that. Just to be there again is nice.
I've seen a lot of talk about this too. With Tennessee has not self-imposed a bowl ban. The NCAA has not made any ruling on Tennessee yet, and they probably won't for at least a year, if not more. They never get in a hurry with this kind of stuff. So
I would guess way more than a
yeah,
year.
probably it takes years. It's like they only decide like once every 2 years, and they do a bunch all at once. So yeah, we have no idea what the NCAA is going to do for now.
Yeah, you can never count, and the only thing that you can guarantee is that the punishment that you get will be arbitrary and stupid and dumb and benefit nobody. That's and it's not in no way will it deter any future actions or anything like that. That's the only thing that you can guarantee is that the outcome will be stupid. That's I can say that. But otherwise, I think that's the bulk of it. Did you have any other thoughts on Heupel as Coach of the Year? Want to throw in anything before we head out, and I'll turn the good people over to the Big Orange podcast, where Zach and I will talk even further in depth about this. And Zach and I specifically, if you want to hear talk about Tennessee, Villanova, and specifically when we do our show, Tennessee will also have played North Carolina on the basketball court by then. So we'll have plenty to talk about Tennessee basketball too on the Big Orange podcast Monday, A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. Go look it up. But parting thoughts, Zach, on Heupel. Anything else you want to throw in?
Yeah, I think Heupel did a really good job. I think of keeping this team focused this week. This could have been kind of one of those letdown games where it's late in the season, not a lot of fans at Neyland. The announced attendance was 75,000. It might have been less, and they looked like they were playing in front of a sold out crowd. They had great energy, great effort, and I think that's all on the coaching staff and the way they had them prepared. I think Tennessee's fans should be extremely excited. I think we'll see a similar performance next week against Vanderbilt too.
That is something that it makes me very happy that Heupel kind of hangs his hat on. Is that being focused? Well, where are you going?
This is completely off subject, but I've seen a lot of these comments from people on social media. Tennessee fans are actually hoping that Dan Mullen keeps his job, and I don't blame him because he's done that thing's went off the rails big time.
So let's throw this in then. I teased it. I didn't know if we would actually talk about this, but now I do. I do want to talk about this. Confidence level 1 to 10 that Dan Mullen has his job by the time you and I do our podcast on Monday.
I mean, I feel like it's got to be
that he keeps his job. Well, I guess it's kind of that he keeps his job is the same as what is the chance that he gets fired. But yeah.
My confidence 1 to 10 that he keeps his job is a 4.
I would go that he has his job by Monday. I would almost go. I don't know. Scott Strickland, the AD, he kind of strikes me as he's a little flip floppy. Maybe not the biggest backbone in the world. Also, Dan Mullen's his guy. Dan's his boy. And so
It just seems like a disaster with the Richardson stuff.
it's
and then
bad. It's really
losing.
bad. So I will say my confidence level that again, the question was, will he have his job by Monday when we do our podcast? My confidence level is like a 6. I think he'll have his job this week, and then especially if they lose to Florida State. But I almost think even if he beats Florida State, I think he's done. I do. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But it's bad. It's really, really bad. But I almost go like, does Strickland go down with the ship? Does Strickland have to go too?
I don't know. Ben has a great comment there. You don't win 2 SEC games at Florida and keep your job. I mean,
it's really
you just
bad.
Don't.
Yeah, and I mean they went. I kind of go back to, I think I said it on our podcast, not here, but I saw somebody say on Twitter, and it's a great point. Like, Florida went and hired Mississippi State's AD, then went and hired Mississippi State's football coach, and they expected non-Mississippi State results. I'm gonna go like, I mean, I can't say you're wrong. He's kept around Mike White with basketball. Now, they look like they might be decent this year. They beat Florida State in one of their first couple of games in basketball. But I know Mike White he's skating on thin ice, boy. And so, however you feel about that,
Tennessee fans should hope that he does not get fired, though.
That's exactly what I was about to say. However you feel about that, I hope that he's still the coach next year, because Tennessee has him in Neyland, and I want to beat Dan Mullen because he's smug and he's annoying and he's like a slightly better Butch Jones, and I want to beat him very badly because I just think next year you get a just discombobulated Florida team. The game's in Neyland. To be able to like cathartically just like whip Florida's ass would be so fun, man. Like, I need it badly.
What's your over-under on the amount of Florida players that transfer?
Oh, I think it's going to be that might be where it falls apart too. Maybe they have sort of falling out like Tennessee, where it's like it doesn't come to like January, but then a bunch of players jump ship and they go, okay, we got to ditch you, Dan. Sorry, bud. Like,
I think it's got to be like 10. Set it at 10 or 8. 10's hot. 8.
Yeah, I feel like 8, not 30. Tennessee, hopefully. But yeah, 8's a good number. I like 8, and I could see that either side. And 8 is really bad. That's a lot of players leaving, especially if they're contributing players like Anthony Richardson, who people presume is going to be a quarterback next year. So, well, I like this comment, but we can't put it up because it has a curse word in it.
I think I know which one.
Because if you know the history there of Dan Mullen, he dressed up as the character from Christmas Vacation, and he tweeted the crapper is full, and it's like a running joke with Dan Mullen. The crapper is indeed full at Florida.
Real quick before we go, then, how did you feel about Eli Drinkwitz, his lightsaber Star Wars comment in response to Dan Mullen dressing up as Darth Vader during the Missouri week, week last year?
At first, I went, "Oh my gosh, this guy is such a dork! Like, what?" And then somebody told me, actually, it's in response to Dan Mullen, an even bigger dork, dressing up like Darth Vader after beating Missouri last year. I went, actually, that's totally awesome. Because it was premeditated. Like, he came in, he went to the store and bought a lightsaber and was like, I'm going to beat Dan Mullen, and then I'm going to bring a lightsaber to the to the post game. Like, I love that level of petty. It's what
makes college football great.
Yeah, everything about that. Drinkwitz, overtime, going for 2 to stick it to Dan Mullen. I love that because I loved it
after the game. They asked him why he went for 2, and he said it was time for the game to end.
Yeah,
either way,
that's always put the game in your players' hands and go and call the right play. and then just go and win. And that's what he did. He went and he called the right play and he won the damn football game. Like, that's it. And he deserves to go and clown on Dan Mullen. You beat him, and he tried to clown on you last year. Good on you, dude. It made me happy. I was after I found out the context, and I wasn't like, oh boy, this dude's making a Star Wars joke in his post game, because that's what I thought initially.
I did too at first.
Drinkwitz is already, he kind of had that reputation for being a sort of this nerdy guy. And I was like, oh boy, is this really what we're doing? And then I was like, that's actually amazing. Congratulations to you. Well done. I support it fully. So, all right. That's it. We're going long here. Thank you to everybody who watched. We had a great time in the comments over here, and appreciate everybody tuning in and then dropping their comments in too. That's awesome. Again, Zach and I, if you want to hear us go even deeper on everything with Tennessee, and specifically what will be added with our podcast, is talk about basketball. We'll break down exactly what's happening. I will say, Zach, I don't like being wrong. And I really, really pumped up the basketball team before the game today, and they really let me down. I wrote a whole article about how this basketball team was going to be fun, and they went out and had a Conzo Martin level basketball game, and it made me want to throw things across the room in anger. So we'll talk about that on the Big Orange Podcast on Monday.
Well, they have tomorrow to turn it around, so maybe it'll be
yeah. You beat North Carolina tomorrow. Everything, all is forgiven, and we're all happy and good to go. But oh boy, that was ugly today. We'll talk about it on Monday. Big Orange Podcast. Just go search it. Spotify, Apple. Otherwise, that's it. Charlie Burris, that's Zach Reagan. A to Z Sports.com for everything that we do and you should go consume for your sports content. And with that said, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to y'all and Jonathan Crompton will be back next week.